Greetings, dear listeners. Hope you're all doing well. We're out here tonight to welcome the super blue moon of August the 30th, 2023. And it's called a blue moon because it's the second full moon during the month of August. And it's a super moon, although right now it looks more like a blood orange moon to me. And in addition to welcoming the blue super moon of August 30th, we're shooting some footage for my upcoming upload, Werewolves in Studebakers. Werewolves in Studebakers. I got the title from my good friend Mr. S over at the Wacky World Lounge. If you've never visited that channel, I'll leave a link in the description, so be sure to check it out. I'm positive you will enjoy it. But for right now, I'm going to ask our lovely and talented cinematographer, Dr. Curious, to give us a panorama shot of tonight's blue, super, blood orange moon of August the 30th. And stay tuned for Werewolves in Werewolves in Studebakers. Till midnight. And here comes one now. Till midnight. Cheers.
Werewolves versus Studebakers. Stupid bakers. Yow. Werewolves versus Studebakers. After his wife's death, Ted took to driving at night and in the wee small hours of the morning. Ted lived in one of the most populous areas in Canada, a continuous city sprawling for over 100 miles. And in the wee small hours, the highways and byways, all of it belonged to Ted. Ted and his black 2016 Dodge Charger. Now, Ted was a radio guy, and as the area in which he lived enjoyed an amazing profusion of AM and FM channels, he was always surfing the airwaves. Jazz, classic rock, news talk, coast to coast, baseball, hillbilly music. Like a vampire, he would drive all night, drive until sunup, then return home and fall into a deep sleep and dream of traffic lights. The lights were always red, which should have been boring, which would have been boring, but for the cars stopped at the lights. They were the classics of his childhood, the cars of the 50s and 60s. There were Caddies, Buicks, and Oldsmobile Rocket 88s, 49 Fords and 57 Chevs. But there were also Packards, Hudson Hornets, Bathtub Nashes, Kaisers, Frasers, and Henry J's. And of course, Studies. Studebakers. Studebakers were Ted's favorites. His old man had owned and loved a 1956 Studebaker champion with a two-tone finish, a granite gray roof above a copper body. And so Ted had loved Studebakers too. But the other nice thing in Ted's dreams, was the person driving the car, the woman driving the car. She was the woman, an amalgam of every woman that Ted had ever known or loved. Ted wouldn't have been able to describe her, but he would know her anywhere. He had seen her many times, usually at a distance or in a crowd, and often in his dreams. It was after midnight, and Ted was cruising the old neighborhood, the place where he had grown up, when he saw a metallic blue 1964 Studebaker Lark go past him on the Lakeshore Road, heading west. He only had a momentary glimpse, but it was her. She, the woman, his dream lover, behind the wheel. Ted pulled a Yui and took off in hot pursuit. The Studi made a right on Kerr and headed north. And then a weird thing happened. The Lark underwent a metamorphosis. As the Studi passed the intersection with Rebecca Street, it accelerated and began to change shape, becoming larger, its color changing from metallic blue to funereal black. And Ted realized he was looking at a Packard hearse from the late 1940s. But it didn't remain a hearse. As the vehicle sped up Kerr, it kept changing shape, and its make, and its year. For a few moments, it was a bottle green 53 Hudson Hornet, then a powder blue 55 Nash, with a body like a moving bathtub. It even became a 49 DeSoto station wagon, a Woody station wagon. Ted followed his quarry west on Spears as it entered the 60s, becoming at first a classic 64 Mustang before transforming itself into a T-Bird, a Vet, a GTO, a Firebird, a Camaro, even a neon green 1970s Charger. Ted was having the most fun he had in years, and he wished the chase would never end. But all good things must end, and the chase ended when his quarry turned back into a metallic blue 64 Studebaker Lark and turned off the fourth line onto the dirt trail that led to the silo. The silo. The silo. The numero uno party spot of Ted's youth. It was the remains of an abandoned barn, complete with a weathered silo, out in the middle of an empty field, fringed by trees and sandwiched on a plot of land between the highway and the train tracks. Ted had forgotten all about it and was amazed it was still there. But there it was, the silo, a pillar of leprous yellow concrete under the beams of a ripe full moon. A ripe full moon. A perfect werewolf moon, Ted said to himself. Then wondered why he thought that. The 64 Lark sat idling by the foundation of the ruined barn. She was waiting for him. Ted got out of the car, but for some mysterious reason, he left the motor running. And as he walked towards the old Studi, he felt lightheaded and weak in the knees. He was finally going to meet her, face to face, the woman of his dreams, his dream lover. Was this the moment for which he had been waiting his entire life? Her driver's side window was down, and she was regarding him with big eyes that reflected the light of the full moon. And she was ravishing. Ravishing? That was an odd choice of words. No superlative would have done justice to her beauty. But ravishing? Ted stood by her window and found himself tongue-tied, finally managing a lame, "Hi. Hi. I've been wanting to meet this woman all my life, and the best I can come up with is hi." Still, she didn't seem to mind, for her dainty hand reached out to Ted, and she smiled and began to change. Her dark hair seemed to pull away from her face. Her ears sharpened into points. Her pert nose became a snout, and her red, ruby lips parted to reveal rows of sharp white teeth, sharp white fangs. The woman, the thing, the werewolf, leaned back in her seat and howled. Ted jumped back, but the werewolf's claws tore his flesh, drawing blood. Still, he'd left the ignition on, so in moments he was backing out of there, as the werewolf or she-wolf or dog-woman or whatever, 10 feet of snarling silver-gray fur, bore down on him, raking its claws across the hood and leaving thick gouges in the metal. Ted lived 45 miles from the silo and took the busy Queen Elizabeth Highway most of the way, weaving through heavy traffic with first a humongous werewolf and then the 64 Studi chasing after him. Somehow he managed to shake it off. Maybe when the sun came up to banish the creatures of darkness. But even though he made it home safe, looking out his window, a few nights later, Ted saw the 64 Lark parked across the street. Ted no longer drives at night. Instead, he's in bed by 10 p.m. and takes medication so he won't dream. But when he does, he dreams he's out at the silo and she's waiting for him in the Studebaker Lark, and he knows that she wants to tear out his throat, but he still gets out of the car and shuts off the ignition. After all, he's gonna be staying, right? Right? The moral of the story? Sometimes beautiful people are indeed quite ravishing. If this is your first visit to my channel, please consider subscribing. My name is Warren, and I write and tell original ghost stories and original horror stories featuring such cryptids as the Night Floaters, Werewolves, and the Black-Eyed Children. So again, please consider subscribing. Please help me to reach my goal of 2,500 subs. Till midnight. Cheers. The video in today's presentation was taken by Dr. Curious, while the music is the Hammeresque Unseen Horrors by that patron of the internet, Kevin MacLeod. Yeah, well, I guess my voice did make it. Getting a little rough there, though. Cheers.